chans att profilera sig på ett bra sätt också genom att bygga upp en bra bas för det här arbetet.
Journalists queuing up to speak to members of the Swedish United Nations contingent as they prepare to leave for a new United Nations assignment. It's the spring of 1992.
Utmaningen att få vara med, att upprätta något sånt här som faktiskt är historiskt unikt.
Shortly before departure, the government take their decision. The United Nations force may be deployed in Yugoslavia.
Mot Jugoslavien. Klart. Tack så. Hej. Det är klart, regeringen har fattat beslutet att styrkan ska genomföras enligt FNs önskan.
The new assignment then concerns Europe for the first time in the history of the World Organization. And for the Swedes, it entailed a tough start in Sarajevo in Bosnia.
It was an experience that I'm grateful that I got a chance to have, but I wouldn't do it again. But I wouldn't have missed it either.
The Swedes are called upon for yet another assignment, this time in Macedonia. Together with troops from Norway and Finland, the Swedes are to ensure that the conflict in former Yugoslavia doesn't spread to the southernmost part of the country. It constitutes a new type of peacekeeping assignment, preventing war. The main and grueling task of the Nordic battalion in Macedonia is patrol duty, and this in a region where the weather conditions are, to say the least, extremely variable. The middle sector of the border between Macedonia and Serbia is assigned to the Norwegians, the western part facing Kosovo and Albania to the Finns, and the east is taken on by the Swedes.
Ja, det är riktigt. Vårt mandat säger att vi ska visa närvaro och att vi ska observera och rapportera. Egentligen innebär det från FNs synpunkt en begränsning i mandatet. Vi ska alltså inte förhindra, motverka, gå emellan, utan faktiskt ägna oss enbart åt detta att övervaka och rapportera.
The initial period in Macedonia, the winter and spring of 1993, was a time of active service for the Swedish UN forces. The Swedes manning the observation posts have to fix their own heating and food. Even so, keeping the many units supplied is a difficult task, since they were spread out and very far apart. The Nordic battalion is charged with guarding a border segment approximately 300 kilometers long. Having so many isolated units does, however, have its advantages. The soldiers have plenty of opportunity to train and prepare for possible emergency situations.
Ja, det som har hänt är alltså att en serbisk patrull på 20 man har upprättat checkpoint uppe på höjden här vid våran stridsställning 2, det vill säga det är på A-sidan, alltså på våran sida. Och har skickat ner 3 man som har sagt åt oss att flyttar vi inte inom en timme så kommer de att skjuta på oss. Sen fick vi ett nytt ultimatum att vi skulle flytta oss på en gång, vilket vi inte gjorde. Vänta. Hur känns det?
En skottskadade, har en skottskada.
Det låter bra. Vi kan sticka till lite nu för jag tänker sätta dropp på dig här.
Lämnet är uppfattat.
Not least important is the medical drill, which inspires confidence among the personnel in their ability to cope even in the most difficult of situations. The UN personnel have at their disposal a helicopter for medical evacuation. The objective of the assignment in Macedonia then was to prevent the conflict in the rest of former Yugoslavia from spreading to this area. The Swedish contingent have now been in Macedonia for 3 years and the area is still at peace. In response to the need for increased UN presence elsewhere in Bosnia, the Swedish government decided to cut back in Macedonia. Part of the Nordic battalion's surveillance area is taken over by the United States. Zagreb, the capital of what is now Croatia. This is where the United Nations forces have their headquarters. The Swedish UN troops posted here are in charge of guard duty, transportation and various staff duties. Roughly 100 Swedes make up the headquarters company. It was one of the very first UN units to arrive in former Yugoslavia in 1992. Only a few weeks after the arrival of the Swedish contingent, fighting breaks out in Sarajevo, and the Swedes are faced with a period of severe difficulties. The headquarters is subsequently moved to Belgrade and then to Zagreb. The activities of the Swedish UN contingents in former Yugoslavia are closely monitored by Defence Headquarters in Sweden. Here, Commander-in-Chief of the Army, Åke Sahlgren, inspects the HQ company. Defence Headquarters is naturally interested in the experience gained by Swedish officers and soldiers on active duty abroad, and how this knowledge might be of use to the Swedish armed forces.
Taking part in UN mission means a very good opportunity to train leaders, officers and units, which all have their position in our own wartime organization in Sweden.
The Commander-in-Chief is also interested in seeing how Swedish UN military personnel perform compared with personnel from other countries. He was very satisfied indeed.
Very good. As far as I can see, they are appreciated from the commanders and other people cooperating with the Swedes. And I can, of course, see on my own that they have are in very good shape. They behave like real soldiers, polite, tough. They are soldiers.
Since the beginning of hostilities in former Yugoslavia, Sweden's contribution has also included civilian police. Over the last 3 years, about 100 highly experienced policemen have served in the war-ridden area.
Son, daughter-in-law and 2 grandchildren. Ne, ništa još.
Ništa.
Ništa.
So then we have to make another contact with civilian affairs.
The most important task throughout is humanitarian aid. But also important is supervising the local police and assisting in various investigations.
We ask her, tell her that we are trying to find her relatives in Novska. So we can do.
What the Swedish men and women serving in the United Nations forces find most rewarding, besides meeting people and experiencing other cultures, is knowing that they have been of help to others. Bosnia is the hardest hit country in former Yugoslavia. To the northeast lies the Tuzla area, where the Nordic battalion is stationed. Included in its assignment is to protect humanitarian aid missions and promote military and political stability in the region. Today, the international UN force in Bosnia numbers about 20,000. Of these, about 1,000 men and women come from Sweden. All have volunteered to serve the cause of peace. Two units from the Nordic battalion were forced to spend their first 6 months separated from the battalion in Tuzla. The Danish tank squadron, which was held up in Belgrade by the Serbs, and an armored company which had been charged with keeping the Serbs and the Bosnians apart on Mount Igman outside of Sarajevo.
Det var väldigt primitivt, det var det. Vi var upplyfta med helikopter på grund av att serberna hade minerat en väg ner till Sarajevo. Och där bodde vi i gamla söndersprängda hus, i små kojor och levde på rations.
Ever since the arrival of Nordbat in 1993, the areas in which the battalion operates have been controlled by the Bosnian government forces. Developments in the area are monitored from a number of observation posts close to the Bosnian Serb front lines. Observation post Bravo 7 is manned by 8 young Swedish UN soldiers.
Trädungen, gräns höger, den högra delen av gläntan.
Camp Odin is Nordbat's headquarters on the outskirts of the town of Tuzla. Here, the soldiers work and live under conditions that are quite different from elsewhere in the zone. All kinds of maintenance is handled here, including the supply of food, fuel and spare parts to the different units. Keeping the Nordic troops in Tuzla supplied is an extremely difficult task. The nearest supply depot is located in Split on the Adriatic coast. It's a journey of 450 kilometers one way.
Golf från Foxtrot 1. Orientering. Målbat säger att det var 5 nedslag, granatnedslag i Konjic för knappt en timme sedan. Vi får avvakta för vidare instruktioner från dem.
The Nordic UN battalion in Bosnia maintains a high degree of medical preparedness in case of emergency. It has been of considerable benefit to the local population. Given the state of the Bosnian health services, treating a civilian with a simple bone fracture is indeed an appreciated form of humanitarian aid. Initially, Tuzla Air Base in northeastern Bosnia was held by the Bosnian Army. Through intensive negotiations, however, Nordbat succeeded in taking charge of the base. It has remained closed, however, because of shelling from the Bosnian Serbs. In Bosnia, mines are a constant threat. The task of clearing the mines and making the airbase safe was assigned to Swedish Army engineers.
Monas, du kan börja sen till höger om Bengtsson också. Med pik alltså. Ja.
More than 3 years have passed since the war in Bosnia first began. Many have described the task faced by the United Nations as extremely difficult. But by helping and supporting civilians, the United Nations has made a major contribution towards eliminating human suffering. Life goes on at the marketplace in Tuzla despite the many civilian casualties claimed by sporadic shelling. For the Nordic battalion commander, the time has come to sum up his experiences of war-torn Bosnia and turn over the command to a new Nordic battalion.
This has been a very good experience for me and my soldiers during our mission down here, because we are working in a hostile environment, and I think we have managed rather well.
The Middle East, the Congo, Cyprus, Kuwait, and former Yugoslavia. These are some of the many places where Swedish peacekeepers have served over the last 50 years. For the first time in the 50-year history of the United Nations, Swedish UN soldiers are participating in peacekeeping missions within Europe, in Croatia, in Macedonia, and in Bosnia. Their task is to give peace a chance.